Welcome back to Everyday English Lounge. If you are washing a cup, walking home, or sitting with the last little bit of energy from your day, come in. We are very glad you're here.
And if you are listening while thinking, why did my day feel so full when I barely did anything? Then yes, this episode found you at exactly the right moment.
That question is so rude.
It is. But it is also accurate.
Sadly true.
Some days are one email, one snack, one strange thought, and suddenly you need emotional recovery.
That sounds like your Tuesday.
My Tuesday had single sock energy from the moment I woke up.
A very advanced lifestyle category.
B1 vocabulary, C2 chaos.
Perfect. So if your English feels a little sleepy today, stay with us. This one sits around B1 to B2, and we are keeping it clear, warm, and easy to follow.
No rush, no performance, and no pressure to catch every word on the first listen.
Just follow the main shape now and come back later for any phrases you want to borrow.
And maybe one or two stories that make me question my breakfast choices.
Only if you deserve it. Today we are talking about how to speak naturally in English about your day.
Which sounds easy till someone asks, "How was your day?" and your brain quietly leaves the building.
Exactly. Many learners know the words for daily activities. I woke up, I went to work, I ate lunch. But natural conversation is not just a list.
It is not a prison report.
Thank you for that image.
You're welcome.
Natural English about your day usually has four things: a little time, a little feeling, one small detail, and one tiny opinion.
The tiny opinion matters. I had a meeting as information. I had a long meeting and it somehow made me more tired than carrying furniture as a person.
Yes. And while you listen, notice how we build simple sentences and then make them softer, more human, and more conversational.
If this episode helps, you can send it to one friend who also freezes when someone gets very brave and asks a very normal question.
Please do. And you can listen once for comfort, then again for phrases you want to borrow.
That is the quiet plan.
Let's start with the most common problem. When someone asks about your day, many learners try to sound correct first and natural second.
Which makes sense. Grammar is standing there with a clipboard.
Yes, but in real conversation, people usually want a shape, not a perfect report. They want to know in a simple way what happened and how you were inside it.
That is why I woke up at 7. I brushed my teeth. I ate bread. I went to work. Sounds accurate and also slightly like a witness statement.
Right. It is not wrong, it is just flat. Natural speech has a little movement. There is usually a beginning, a turn, and a feeling.
Or what we can call fact, feeling, detail.
I like that. Fact, feeling, detail. Very usable.
And the good news is this: you do not need an interesting day. Ordinary days are actually easier to talk about because the language repeats in real life.
That is important. Some listeners think, my day was boring, so my English will sound boring.
I half agree.
Of course you do.
A boring day can sound boring if you remove all the human parts.
Fair. So keep the human parts. This morning, for example, I woke up a little late because I turned off my alarm and immediately forgot I had done that.
A bold opening choice.
Thank you. Then I made tea, put my notebook on the table, and knocked the tea over with my own elbow.
There it is, the notebook incident.
Yes. Small tragedy, no real danger, very dramatic in the moment.
Your notebook looked like it had been through weather.
Exactly. So if I tell the story like a textbook, I say, I woke up late, I spilled tea. I missed the first bus. I went to work.
Alive, but only technically.
But if I speak more naturally, I might say, my morning was a little messy. I woke up late, spilled tea on my notebook, and then had to rush for the bus. So by the time I got to work, I already felt like I had lived half a day.
That last part matters. I felt like I had lived half a day. Now I know the emotional weather.
Yes? Notice that the grammar is still simple. Past tense, common words, nothing fancy. The natural part comes from how the details connect.
Also from the little evaluation, a little messy, had to rush, already felt tired. These are soft, real phrases people use all the time.
And you can do this even if your day was quiet. Maybe you say, "It was a slow morning. I answered a few messages, made breakfast late, and tried to wake up properly around 10."
That is good because tried to wake up properly is honest English. Many adults are technically awake and spiritually unavailable.
That might be the sentence of the week.
Please put it on a mug.
Not next to my tea, apparently. If you're listening now, think about your own morning, not the whole day. Just the morning. What is one fact, one feeling, and one small detail?
Maybe the fact is, I had an early class. The feeling is, I was nervous. The detail is, I kept checking the time while my toast burned a little.
There. That already sounds like a person talking.
And here's a misunderstanding I want to remove. Natural does not mean fast. Natural does not mean full of slang. Natural means connected.
Yes, if you speak slowly and clearly but the ideas belong together, you will sound much more natural than someone who uses 3 trendy phrases and no real meaning.
Thank you for protecting the world from random slang attacks.
It is honest work.
I once heard someone learn the phrase "I am dead" from the internet and then use it to describe being sleepy after lunch.
That is a dangerous path.
He was alive, just full of noodles.
Exactly. You do not need that. You need useful time markers, useful feelings, and useful transitions. One easy way to add shape is with time phrases. This morning, on the way, around lunch, later in the afternoon, by the end of the day. These help the listener walk with you.
They are like little stepping stones. On the way means during your movement from one place to another.
So you might say, on the way to work, I ran into an old classmate. Or around lunch, I finally had time to sit down and eat.
And if you want a very simple pattern, try this. This morning, then by the end of the day. That is enough for many conversations.
You do not have to tell everything. Please do not feel you need to report every hour, like a weather app.
Unless somebody asks you directly, what happened at 2:15, in which case you may have bigger problems.
True. Most of the time, people only need 2 or 3 moments.
I want to add one thing. Sometimes learners stop because they cannot remember the exact word. Maybe you forgot umbrella or receipt or deadline.
Then go around it. That is very natural.
Yes. Say, the thing for rain may be not forever, but in the moment it keeps the conversation alive.
Or say, I had to finish something for work. Simple is strong.
This matters because natural conversation is not a vocabulary competition. It is connection under mild time pressure.
That is such a good way to say it. Connection under mild time pressure.
Which is also how I describe making dinner.
Leo, everything is a philosophy with you.
And a cooking problem.
Here's another small example. Imagine your day was actually ordinary. You woke up, worked, and came home. Instead of saying only that, you can say, honestly, it was a pretty normal day. But I had one nice moment on the bus because the sunlight came through the window and I suddenly felt calm.
That sentence is quiet and memorable. Nothing huge happened, but now I can picture it.
Exactly. Natural speech often lives in these small pictures.
So if you think your day is not important enough to talk about, that is usually not true. You may just be skipping the tiny details that make it real.
And that is good news because tiny details are easier than perfect grammar.
Also cheaper.
Much cheaper. Once you have the basic events, the next step is choosing the angle. Real conversations about your day are often less about the full timeline and more about what kind of day it was.
Yes. Was it slow, heavy, surprisingly good, annoying in a very specific way?
Exactly. People often answer, how was your day, with mood first. Pretty good. A bit hectic. Kind of long. Better now. Then they add one reason.
That one reason is gold. Without it, the answer can close the door. With it, the other person knows where to step.
For example, if I say, it was fine, conversation can end there. If I say, it was fine, just a bit busy because 2 things happened at once, now you can ask more.
Or if I say, honestly, it was pretty normal, but one conversation stayed with me. That gives the other person a handle.
A handle means something the listener can hold on to.
Nice. One small definition, very controlled. We are disciplined today.
We are trying.
Let me give you a real example from last week. My day looked unremarkable from the outside. I answered emails, sat through a long meeting, bought groceries, came home. End of report.
And emotionally?
Emotionally, it moved around more than that. The meeting dragged, and I was getting irritated because everybody used too many words to say one simple thing.
A timeless workplace tradition.
Truly. Then around lunch, my sister sent me a message about my nephew's school play. It was just a short text and a blurry photo, but it changed my whole mood.
I love that. Tiny event. Wheel shift.
Exactly. So when a friend asked me later, "How was your day?" I did not say, "I had a meeting and bought groceries." I said, "It started kind of tiring because work felt slow." But then my sister sent me a funny photo of my nephew, and that honestly rescued the day.
That is natural English. There is movement, contrast, and feeling.
And it is not dramatic. I did not say, "My soul returned to my body."
Thank you for your restraint.
I saved that for lost luggage and excellent soup.
As you should. Some learners worry that if they talk about feelings, it will sound too personal.
Sometimes it can, depending on the context.
True. Let me sharpen that. You do not need a deep confession. Usually, one light emotional word is enough. Relieved, tired, a bit stressed, pretty calm.
Yes, that is the better framing. Think of it as temperature, not autobiography.
That is excellent.
Thank you, I occasionally deserve praise.
Occasionally. Also, the way you talk about your day depends on who is asking. With a coworker, you might keep it light and practical. With a close friend, you may go a little deeper. With a language partner, you might focus on easy, clear storytelling.
This matters because natural English is not one fixed performance. It changes with the room.
Exactly. If your neighbor asks, "Long day," you probably do not begin with chapter 1 of your inner life.
Unless your neighbor made tea for you and pulled out a chair.
Even then, maybe not chapter 1. Maybe a short version.
Fair.
So you can choose a slice. A slice means one part, not the whole thing. You can talk about your day through one moment, one problem, or one surprise.
For example, most of my day was ordinary. My train was delayed and that threw everything off.
Or it was a quiet day, but I finally finished something I had been avoiding.
That second one sounds very satisfying.
It is, and it gives the listener something emotional to connect with. Avoiding something and finally doing it is universal.
Deeply universal. The human race is powered by snacks and delayed tasks.
Let me build a scene. Imagine you meet a classmate after an evening lesson. They ask, "How was your day before class?" You could say, "Busy. I worked all day." That is okay.
But it is still standing outside the house.
Yes. A more natural version could be, "It was a bit hectic. Work was busy, and I had that feeling of running from one thing to the next. So coming to class actually helped me slow down."
That last line is lovely because it tells me what class means to you.
And it invites a response. Maybe the classmate says, "Really? I felt the opposite. I was half asleep."
Then you have a conversation, not just an answer.
Exactly.
Can I ask the listener something here?
Please.
When someone asks about your day, do you always try to start at the beginning? Because you do not have to. You can start with the part that has energy.
That is such a helpful point. You can begin with, "Honestly, the strangest part was," or "The best part was," or "I was fine until."
"I was fine until" is strong. It makes everybody lean in a little.
It does. And you can use it for small things too. "I was fine until I realized I had sent the wrong attachment." Very human.
Horrifying, but human.
Or, "My day was pretty good until the grocery bag broke on the walk home."
That happened to me once. One cucumber rolled into the street like it had urgent business.
I remember that story. You sounded personally betrayed.
I was. The cucumber was emotionally damaged after that.
That phrase should not be useful, but somehow it is. Another thing that makes speech sound more natural is not over-explaining every small action.
Yes. We do not need, first I opened the refrigerator, then I took out the milk, then I looked at the bread, unless the bread is central to the drama.
The bread must earn its place.
High standards.
Instead, compress the ordinary parts and expand the meaningful parts. You can say, the morning was normal, but lunch was awkward because. That balance sounds much closer to real speech.
Compress and expand. Nice and simple.
If you want one more usable pattern, try mostly. But, for example, mostly it was a calm day, but the afternoon got stressful.
Or, mostly everything went fine, but I was more tired than I expected.
Very good. That phrase, more than I expected, is natural and gentle.
It also works for good things. I liked the movie more than I expected. The walk helped more than I expected.
Yes, natural English is full of these soft comparisons. They make you sound thoughtful, not robotic. I had another example a few months ago. It was one of those days where almost nothing impressive happened. I worked from home, answered messages, made soup, and nearly convinced myself I had nothing to say in English class that evening.
Dangerous thought.
Yes, then our teacher asked, "How was your day?" And I almost said, "Nothing special." But what I actually meant was quiet, a little lonely, and then better in the evening.
That is much more alive.
So I said, honestly, it was a quiet day. I was at home most of the time, and I started to feel a bit shut in. But then I went out for class, and just being around people helped.
That is such a good example because nothing dramatic happened, but the emotional movement is clear.
Exactly. And several people responded because they knew that feeling.
This is worth saying directly. When you talk naturally about your day, you are not trying to impress people. You are helping them recognize something human.
Yes. That is why simple, honest language often works best.
And if you're worried about grammar mistakes, remember this. A small mistake inside a real sentence is usually easier to listen to than a perfect sentence with no life.
I agree. With one tiny correction, accuracy still matters. We are not throwing grammar into the sea.
Fine. We are setting grammar on a chair nearby.
Exactly. Close enough to help, not so close that it scares you silent.
That is an unusually tender image for grammar.
I contain multitudes. Now, once you can say what happened and how it felt, the final step is making it sound social.
Because most of the time, how was your day is not a speech competition. It is an exchange.
Exactly. Natural answers leave space for the other person. They do not close the door too fast, and they do not take the whole room.
This is where many learners do one of two things. They either say almost nothing, like fine, normal, okay, or they try to explain every event from sunrise to dinner.
Yes, we need the middle path.
A deeply English learning sentence.
If you want a very simple tool, use what I call the open door ending. Finish with a line that makes response easy.
We are now naming techniques like responsible adults.
Examples: have you had days like that? So that was my little victory today. How about you? It was tiring but okay in the end.
Even how was yours does important work. Short, kind, natural.
Very. And if you want to sound more conversational inside the answer, use little connectors like so, but, actually, even, and in the end.
These are tiny words, but they create flow. I was tired, but the meeting went better than I expected. It was raining, so I stayed in. I thought the day would be bad, but actually it turned out fine.
Notice again, none of that is advanced, it just sounds lived in,
Lived in is nice, like a sweater you trust.
or a phrase you can wear without thinking too hard.
Let me show two versions of the same answer. Version 1, I went to work. I had lunch. I went home. I studied English.
Clear but closed.
Version 2, it was a pretty normal day. Work was busy in the morning. Then I had a nicer afternoon than I expected. And now I'm trying to end the day with a little English. How about you?
Much better. Same life, more shape.
And the listener can now answer several ways. They can ask about work, about the nicer afternoon, or about your study plan.
That is the goal. Give people a place to enter.
Not a locked door with 4 verbs nailed to it.
Strong image.
Thank you.
I also want to challenge a common habit. Some learners think nothing special is the safest answer.
Sometimes it is.
Sometimes. But if you always use it, you train yourself to stop right where natural conversation begins.
That is fair. So maybe keep nothing special and add one thread. Nothing special, but I finally cleaned my desk. Or nothing special, just a little tired today.
Yes, that is the improvement. You do not need to abandon simple language. You need to extend it by one step.
One small step. Very on brand for us.
Completely.
Can I give one micro pattern people can steal immediately?
Please.
Past event, but result. For example, I was tired, but I went for a walk, so I feel better now. That shape is incredibly natural because it shows change.
Yes. Event, contrast, result. Very common in spoken English.
Another one, I missed the bus, but I got a later one, so it was okay. Or, I thought the meeting would be awful, but it was short, so I can't complain.
That last phrase, I can't complain, is also very natural when the day was not perfect but not terrible.
Important emotional middle ground. English uses that middle ground all the time.
I saw this happen at a language exchange once. A woman was asked, "How was your day?" And she said, "Nothing special." The room went quiet for a second.
Brutal.
Then she laughed and added, "Actually, that's not true. I spent 20 minutes looking for my keys, and they were in my bag the whole time." Suddenly, everybody started telling key stories.
Because that is how conversation works. One honest detail invites another.
Exactly, and notice the tone. She was not performing. She was just letting the real day in.
Also, keys in the bag is a universal experience. Right next to glasses on your head.
And the phone you are currently holding while asking where your phone is.
A modern tragedy.
So if you want your English to sound more natural, try thinking less about perfect content and more about shared human moments.
Small inconvenience is actually premium conversation material.
It really is. Listener, think about the last time someone asked about your day in English. Where did you stop too early?
Did you stop at the activity? I worked. Did you stop at the mood? I was tired. Or did you stop before the interesting turn? I was tired, but then.
That little "but then" is often where your natural voice begins.
And if you're talking with a friend or partner, do not forget follow-up questions. Natural conversation about daily life is usually mutual. How was your day? What made it stressful? Did it get better? Was that a good surprise or a bad one?
Yes, you can practice both sides. Speaking naturally about your day also means learning how to receive someone else's day.
That is beautifully put.
Thank you.
I have one more scene because it shows how small the difference can be. Imagine you come home and your roommate asks, "How was work?"
Version 1,
Fine. Busy.
accurate and deeply lonely.
Version 2, busy, honestly. The morning dragged, but I finished one task I had been avoiding, so I feel lighter now.
So much better. Now the roommate can say, "What task?" or "At least you got it done."
Or they can say, same. I had single sock energy all day.
There it is. Callback accepted.
Thank you. I brought it back responsibly.
Let me gather this before we slow down for vocabulary. To talk naturally about your day in English, you do not need a dramatic life, advanced slang, or a perfect memory.
You need a small shape.
Yes. What happened, how it felt, and one detail that makes it real.
Then a little connection word. But, so, actually, in the end.
And if possible, an open door for the other person.
How about you remains undefeated.
Also, be kind to yourself if your first answers feel basic. Natural speech grows by gentle layering. First the fact, then the feeling, then the detail, then the shared space.
That is quiet progress, which we respect.
Always. And remember, your ordinary day is not empty material. It is where real language lives.
In the bus ride, the late lunch, the bag that breaks, the tea on the notebook, the cucumber with a difficult afternoon.
Poor cucumber.
It went through something.
And on that note, let's do our word tour and collect 10 expressions that will make it easier to talk about your day in a more natural way.
Slower pace now. Breathe, listen, repeat if you can.
All right, word tour time. 10 useful phrases, slow pace, clear meaning. If one phrase feels especially good in your mouth, keep it.
And do not chase all 10 at once. Borrow 2 this week, use them in real life, and let the others wait for you. Spoken English grows like that.
First one is pretty much. It means almost or mostly in a relaxed spoken way.
It is very useful when your day had one main shape, even if not every minute matched it exactly.
So if you say, I pretty much worked all day, you do not mean every second. You mean work was the main story.
You can also say, I pretty much stayed home, or I pretty much forgot about lunch until 3. Soft, common, every day.
Repeat. Pretty much.
Second is on the way. We use it for the time between places, while you are moving from here to there.
That matters because many daily stories happen in transition, not just at the destination.
Example, on the way to work, I ran into an old friend and suddenly my mood changed.
Or, on the way home, I bought bread and decided dinner could stay simple. It gives your story movement.
Repeat, on the way.
Third is ended up. Use it when the final result was different from the plan, or when life quietly took another turn.
This is one of my favorite daily life phrases because real days rarely follow the first. Plan.
Example, I wanted to study after dinner, but I ended up falling asleep on the sofa.
Another one. We thought the cafe would be full, but we ended up getting the best table by the window. Great phrase for unexpected outcomes.
Repeat. Ended up.
Fourth is kind of. This softens your sentence. It means something like somewhat or a little, and it makes spoken English feel more human.
If you say, I was kind of nervous, it sounds gentler than a very strong statement. It leaves room for nuance.
You can also say, the afternoon was kind of slow, or I was kind of hoping the meeting would end early.
Use it lightly, not in every line, and it will sound natural rather than blurry.
Repeat, kind of.
Fifth is a bit. Another soft phrase very useful for feelings and small problems.
Example, I was a bit tired this morning, or the bus was a bit late, so I had to rush.
What I like about a bit is that it is honest without sounding too heavy. Good for ordinary days, which is exactly our topic.
You can use it with emotions, energy, or even opinions. I was a bit worried. It was a bit noisy. Very flexible.
Repeat. A bit.
Sixth is by the time. Use it to show the state or feeling that existed when another moment arrived.
Example. By the time I reached home, I was ready to say yes to the first snack I saw.
Very real. Another example, by the time the last meeting ended, my brain was basically closed for business.
This phrase helps you gather several earlier events into one result, which is perfect when describing a long day.
Repeat, by the time.
7 is nothing special. It means ordinary, not exciting, nothing huge to report.
Very common phrase, but remember what we said earlier. It works better when you open the door a little more.
So instead of stopping at nothing special, try nothing special, but I finally cleaned my desk, or nothing special, just a little tired today.
Same simple phrase, better conversation. The extra thread gives the other person somewhere to go.
Repeat, nothing special.
Eighth is catch up. This phrase has 2 very useful daily meanings.
First, it can mean doing work you missed when you fell behind. I spent the afternoon catching up on messages.
Second, it can mean talking with someone and sharing updates. I met a friend after work and we caught up over coffee.
So one phrase lives in both work life and friendship life, which makes it especially valuable.
Repeat, catch up.
Ninth is worn out. Stronger than tired, it means very tired. Like the day used up your battery.
Example, I was worn out after the trip, or by 9 o'clock, I felt completely worn out.
This is good when tired feels too small. Just use it when you really mean it, because it has weight.
Not for a tiny yawn, more for the kind of day that makes your sofa look like a life decision.
Repeat. Worn out.
Last one is turned out. Use it when the final result becomes clear, especially if it surprises you.
Example, I thought the day would be awful, but it turned out fine. That small shift sounds very natural in spoken stories.
Another example, the restaurant looked quiet, but it turned out to be great. Or, I was worried about the call, but it turned out easier than expected.
This is a wonderful phrase for calm storytelling because life often changes a little after the first impression.
Repeat, turned out.
If you want to practice, choose any three of these and make one tiny day summary tonight.
For example, it was pretty much a normal day, but by the time I got home, I was worn out. See? Very natural.
Or, on the way to class, I ran into a friend, and the evening turned out better than I expected.
That is enough. No performance, just real phrases you can actually use.
And now let's come in for a gentle landing. Take a slow breath. If your day felt messy, that does not mean your English has to be.
And if your English felt messy, that does not mean the day was lost. We are working with real life, not perfect conditions.
For tiny homework, tell your day in 3 lines tonight: what happened, how it felt, and one small detail you remember.
Say it out loud if you can. Quiet voice is fine. Kitchen voice is fine. Single sock voice is also accepted.
In the comments, tell us one phrase from today's episode that you want to use this week.
And tell us about one small moment from your day that looked ordinary but stayed with you.
If this episode helped, you can like it so more learners can find it.
And you can subscribe if you want more calm English practice that sounds like real life.
And if one friend came to mind, you can share this with them too.
Or with someone who recently lost a cucumber to the street.
I'm Mia.
And I'm Leo. Thanks for spending part of your day with us. We'll see you next time on Everyday English Lounge.